In this Prograph Talk, Matt Milstead and I talk with deadmau5 about how he uses Cinema 4D in his workflow.
Okay, so I'm super excited to, this is kind of like the ultimate get, we get some good people throughout who, are big in motion graphics, and we've scored some really good interviews and stuff like that. But this is international. I told my family about this and they knew who I was talking about. So that feels good. So I'm super excited that today we get to interview deadmau5. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me, man. I'm just so glad this is a thing, and I wanna tweet this out after, because I think more people need to be aware of kind of what's going on with our show content and stuff, and how it's developed, and how those and see that those communities exist, because a lot of people really take visuals and music or stage performance, in my case, which is what I'm developing now, is kind of just for granted, well, yeah, well, you have to, you're going to get it. Well, where do they come from? What kind of work goes into it? Who are these artists? Oh, I didn't even know this was a viable career, and it fucking is at some of the rates I've seen, Trust me, that was actually the second motivator for me to get into this, was the money I save on paying a production company to do this shit. It was I bet. Wow, I'm in the wrong fucking business, man. I've been making music this whole time. I could have done motion graphics for a fucking musician who's willing to pay for it because he doesn't know how to do it himself and will never learn,
I saw that you were on the front page of Reddit yesterday.
No.
Yeah.
For what?
The video of you finding the guy who...
for the belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one's been making the rounds. It's weird. It just comes and goes, and it's 5 years.
Yeah.
And then the news picks it up hey, look what just happened last week. I'm
right.
Yeah.
I was laying in bed with my wife the other night, and I was showing her that video, and she just got this big smile on her face with how excited you got over that.
Yeah, well,
cool.
The reason I got excited really was because I don't know what it is, but you gotta sit through so much crap when you're dealing with electronic music.
Yeah. I'm sure, yeah.
Because it's so accessible and everyone can do it, so everyone can do a demo and everyone can send you an idea, and that's cool, but
yeah.
I got this idea, check it out. I'm automatic.
Yeah. Well, how long have you been working in 3D? I was thinking, this is a new thing that he's getting into, he's gonna start creating his own concert visuals and stuff, and I was thinking to myself, holy crap, he's so much better than, I've been doing this forever, and he's a million times better than me just in the little bit of time that he's been using this, and it's but no, how long have you been doing this? You're talking about Houdini and 3ds Max. You must have been doing this 3D stuff for a while.
Well, I've always been kind of a over-the-shoulder looker guy when it comes to my everything, So except for my music. When I'm making music, that's just kind of a me thing, and that's all. It's the way it's always been. But then, of course, when things got upscaled in my career, and then we had to start obviously bringing other elements in, okay, well, you need a music video, right? So I'm the guy who's basically sitting in the production truck, looking at the guys doing the work and learning what they do, so that when I start to make suggestions, they're founded, and I don't sound like a fucking moron, and right, they know that I know what they're talking about, and we can get exactly what we want through that language. And the same kind of applied to the show content, and the way that happened is that, so the way our shows over the last 5 years have relatively worked is that we get together a lot of really cool motion graphic guys, and they bring their workstations to a warehouse. And then we set up the stage. We set it up like you would see it on a stage. We build every light, fixture, smoke, all the way down to the smoke machines, you know what I mean? And shit like that. So that the light guys can get a really good sense of, how it's all going to look. Because you have things light warm-up times that you just can't account for in CAD.
Right.
So you can't you can pre-program a bit, but it's always best to have everything on and running and while everyone's there. So we set up our rigs like, out in some warehouse or a rehearsal studio somewhere, depends. And we get all the content developers together and the light techs and everybody and rehearse building the stage and taking it down because you got to do it quickly, like it's
right.
So that's how that happens. And now when the content guys are chugging away, and this goes back, 10 years or so, I was always like, kind of over their shoulders in the back looking like, hey, that, well, not looks easy, but, something I could get into and something I might enjoy. So, as I'm watching them do that, I can offer advice and feedback and stuff like that. Not like tips, but, just
right.
Things that I could say, oh, can we just take this? And I know this plugin for this that you can use for that actually. And they're like, oh, cool. So it's kind of like a feedback thing as opposed to, the rock star who just shows up to the first show and he's like,
right,
expecting everything to work and look great and not have to worry about it. But there are some guys too that are just so fucking busy with everything else that they can't worry about that shit. So we need to outsource that work, Yeah. So I'll never learn enough to be able to 100%, do my whole show, like as in everything from light design to stuff, even though I have enough kind of tidbits and info to stuff like that. But that's not the point because it's a collaborative effort and you want these different styles and these different artists with different ideas to come together and do their thing. But it's just so much better to kind of learn their craft so you could talk their language
for sure
was the main idea. And then, as that went on, it was something that appealed to what I would do in my free time if I wasn't a musician, So the interest kind of, it's just fun to learn and do things. And then if you produce something, even if it's a 10-second fucking thing that was only used for 1 second in the show, you could, you get that. I made that, that's cool. It's like, you guys sure get that all the time if you do like a title sequence for Fox News or fucking whatever, you see it and you're like, hey, awesome, it gives you that sense of achievement and accomplishment. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, but it's like I mean, you're huge. I mean, you're worldwide,
Sure.
I mean, don't you already have that sense of achievement, It's
but I mean, why stop there,
Right.
I'm not saying, I'd be bored to death if I only had to make music all the time. Hey, maybe my music would be like a million times better than it is now if I didn't bother with any of this shit. Just did that. It probably would be. But
yeah,
I have ADHD fucking development stuff. So if I see someone doing something cool and it's new and it's interesting, it's like getting a hot girlfriend every 3 months. It's awesome.
Did you start in 3D? Like, what was your first 3D thing you ever messed with?
The first 3D thing I ever dicked with was when I was in high school. I want Macromedia made it.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that one? And it was really terrible. It was like, well, of course it was. It was like 20 years old. It was when Macromedia was Macromedia. They had a 3D thing, and then in one of the we had a satellite school that hosted tech classes and stuff like that. So of course, I was just drawn to that magnet program, of course, and they were teaching Flash and that Shockwave, and they were two very different things.
Oh yeah,
and I never understood the Shockwave thing, but whatever. And then they had a 3D app, but I can't remember what it was called, but it was ridiculous. And then I got into that and was like, whoa, I can move around in like 3D space and make balls and make like a little crappy alien head or something like that, and then that was my first taste of so that's how they do this,
Right.
And you learn things like keyframing and shit that still applies now on the most basic of levels. And then I was like, yeah, that's cool. So when it came full circle to me, I saw how it was done and how you have to render these frames to video and stuff like that. I wasn't a moron. Wasn't devil magic to me.
Right.
So have you used 3D Max and all those other programs too?
I'm pretty sure I've been through it all of it. Bryce 3D was like the ultimate instant gratification. Toronto there was a really like, a big rave scene out here, like, and by rave I mean actual rave, not Ticketmaster rave. So
Right.
this is like early 90s, late 80s, and those raves, right? So like a lot, for whatever reason, another thing that got me really into the 3D stuff was that all these flyers were like, done in 3D apps and stuff like that, with like just crazy amounts of specular and reflection, all that stuff. So they would make these like really techie looking drum and bass flyers, like a 3D skull kind of thing. And I was like, man, that's some cool art, and how do they do that? And, and then there was a lot of like, Bryce 3D abuse, where they would do some ethereal mountain, like the water and all that stuff, because it was just so quick to do. So, the kid could do it, and it's not like a big industry. So a lot of it was really hack, and then before that, and then all that kind of tied in with demo scene stuff I was seeing and all this stuff. And I was like, I got to get into doing that kind of shit.
So were you kind of learning? I mean, you were doing your music, of course. I mean, you've been doing your music forever, Yeah. And like, was it like right when you were starting your music, you were learning 3D, and then you just decided to go over to the music and like?
No. It was all at the same time, because I mean, it was at a time in my life where it was like, what am I gonna fucking do? Well, what is my job going to be? I should do music, but I shouldn't plan on being Dead Mouse, because, that's like, so much luck and this and time and place and where you put yourself to expose yourself to those opportunities. It's just not worth 100%ing that. So I was like, okay, well, if that doesn't work out, I want to be a digital artist, whether it's Flash, web design. I did a lot of that. I did a lot of coding in Flash, like ActionScript and all that stuff. And just, Photoshop. I had a part-time job working for a newspaper designing the coupon section. So, a company would go and pay for advertising space, but they didn't have a graphic designer. So I worked for, a guy who just shat those out using, Corel Draw. And all that stuff. So I've had many odd jobs, but they all gravitated towards digital media, like audio. I was editing TV or radio commercials, and stuff like that. So I could apply my audio knowledge to that. And then, so it was just like digital media. That's what I wanted to do. That would be my fallback. So if it really wasn't for me and the bright idea of sticking on a foamy mouse head, I could be at, some firm, doing their graphic design, or, maybe working in a production house and doing motion graphics, or,
that's so awesome. That is so awesome.
And so Houdini, I guess, is one of the programs you mess with around with too, right? And transitioning into Cinema 4D is probably a little easier than going the opposite direction, right?
Yeah. It's like having a Neve console and all the analog gear in the world, and then be like, oh, dude, Fruity Loops, it's the shit.
Yeah.
fuck this thing, like, this is all big. I can run this on my iPhone now, It's kind of that. It feels like that kind of logic, but a tool's a tool, and very much can like be said about music production too. It's like, oh, I've got a $25,000 15-year-old Moog synth that's analog classic, 40-year-old synth, and it's great and stuff like that. But a result is a result, and everybody knows that. So.
Totally. You're using Octane, right? And I've noticed that you've been using iRay.
Well, that's the thing. iRay, I'm getting into a lot now because of, there's two sides to it. One is that, it's a good renderer. It is. If you let it, kind of fucking sit there and do its thing and all that stuff. And NVIDIA is a really cool company that, we've been in bed with on a lot of projects. My LAN here, we've done a lot of, events together, and we're family. I know all the guys there, and I use a lot of their products for gaming and streaming, and and now it got talks like, guys, how can we incorporate your GPU technology into the show, in a way that's not whatever. like I just did it for the sake of doing it. I really want to use some new technology as opposed to, you know, hey, can we put a sticker on a laptop and then just show it in a commercial or interview or something like that? Because it's just like, it's useless, you know. It's for both, you know. Like I don't need a sticker, and they don't need to give away shit, you know, for nothing. You know, they want to see it put to work, right?
Right.
Just like, anyway. Like it's like, so you don't want to give Mario Andretti a car just so we can park it in his fucking garage and never drive. You know?
Yeah. Right.
So we've been doing a lot of interesting things, and one of the kind of things that I am working on that I'm not going to talk about too much is that all this rasterized rendering stuff is good and great and all and stuff like that, but really there's no reason why that cube cannot run within a game engine.
Yes.
You know, and do real time stuff. Well, there are a couple reasons why it doesn't, and one is because how do you make enough content to, you know, whatever, when you can just shit out a render over like lots of time. But making a scene is a lot of programming and shading and all this stuff, and then you know, how do you flip from one scene to another without, you know, reloading another file like instantly? So we're working on that out through like a game engine, through like Unreal. And of course, I approached NVIDIA and I said, well, you know, we're going to be running this on Titans. Like one Titan will power the cube, no problem, you know. And then they're like, yeah, okay, well, let's work on that. So we've been working on that in parallel. And then on top of that, they're like, well, what are you doing in the interim? And I'm like, well, I'm rendering out content, you know, and of course using NVIDIA GPUs just like everyone else. So it's like, you know, I'm just throwing CUDA cores at Octane and all that stuff. And then and they're like, oh, okay, well, we can supply the cards for that and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, you know, they give you a little rig. And
I noticed you had like 9 cards or something.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's like
analyzing your cards when you post stuff.
But I'll explain a few things. But the problem with that is you kind of throttled by your network, and you, like my render time is like 2 seconds a frame internally. But if you account in for bringing the PNG data back or the render data back over the network, it's actually longer than rendering locally off one machine because of you know, your bandwidth through your network, right? It's because 4 meg a second or something like that if you're doing 1 frame a second. So there's no way your render is going to be real time. Now, interesting thing about iRay is if you're fortunate enough to log into their Santa Clara VCA, what it does, their VCA is just cranking away on your thing, and it's just a single point connection, but it's sending back a video, but you can't tell at the time. On the server end, it's rendering frames however you want, like if you want a PNG sequence or whatever. But for the IPR, it's sending back H.2.4, which you can get like 4K, and you don't really need that much bandwidth to do that. So you're sitting there, you know, modeling away, and you're seeing like, you know, 40,000 iteration renders in real time, you know, moving around your screen. You're like, holy fuck, you know. But yeah, that makes sense because I'm looking at a video file, right? But how would it be if on the other end it's printing out PNGs while I'm doing this? Well, it can, but then there comes your network problem again. You have to suck all that stuff back. So you have to do it after the fact. So I was like, fuck, guys, this render is fucking great in the sense that, you know, I can work pretty much full quality in my IPR for what I'm doing, you know, like with the amount of rays and stuff like that. It's not over the top volumetric fucking craziness with light and all this billions of ray bounces. But for what I'm doing, it's actually pretty good. And so now it's not here yet, but it should be here actually like tomorrow or whatever. I got one of those GP100, well, 8 of them in one VCA core.
Oh, nice.
So I'm going to stick that in here, and then since it'll all be local, I'll be rendering as fast as I'm creating. Actually, I'll be slower creating than rendering. So that's a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
So that you know, I can do my things, update my show content like pretty much instantly in the interim until our stuff comes out. So, and iRay is still really young, so it doesn't quite have a lot of, you know, kind of under the hoodness that Octane has, with like when you're doing your shading and stuff like that, and some basic things that you would expect out of a production render, because I think they started iRay internally as a thing to just do their own products with, because hey, fucking NVIDIA money, let's make a render, fuck it, and never sell it because who cares, right? And they used it to model their things, and then they started going into the automotive industry. Like, so you go to McLaren or you go to Ford or whatever, and you want to see your car paint and all that stuff. They're like, "Oh, we can do this real time." So it was really boutique renderer, and it was like they didn't account for how it would be used in a production renderer, like because they're like, "Well, you're rendering out single beauty frames. You're not doing motion graphics with it and stuff like that." Now they're starting to see the potential it could have as its own standalone kind of renderer thing, and their thing is like, I think Octane is fast for a reason, That's how I feel about Octane. And Octane's fucking great too. I've been switching it up between the two because there's just certain things Octane does that Iray doesn't. One being like, static noise samples every scatter, you know what I mean? Whereas Octane dynamic noise, noise for the sample scatter on the start, but Iray doesn't do that. So if you stop all motion and then render out a whole bunch of frames, it doesn't give you that film grain look. It's just printing the exact same image every time, and you're like,
right.
So I'm on the horn with those guys, and I'm sure a lot of other guys are too. Are like saying, hey, put this in, do this. Let's get under the hood with the the shaders and stuff like that, and add more. Yeah. It's a really big beast of a renderer now, but it just needs to be tweaked and tuned a bit, and then hopefully maybe one day they'll do a standalone for it so you can get in under the hood like Octane does, because right now it's just a really not crappy but very minimal hack plug-in front end that's addressing the kernel, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I've used Iray. I've played around with it quite a bit, and I find it's super snappy. It's really quick. But my biggest problem I have with it is the MDL shaders. It's like I have no clue how to manipulate those very well. And
you know what? It's a little kludgy, but I spend about 2-3 hours with it, just trying to do the things that I would do with other shader libraries and stuff like that. And it's, once you get into it, you'll figure out its workflow. It's just more them needing to update that workflow as opposed to forcing you to go so far under the hood to figure out, how do I just add a fucking emission to something? It takes a minute. Yeah. It's a lot different than you would do it in Octane, whereas I just drop a node and then I'm done. It's all there. It's just in a weird way, So that explains the Iray thing, and then plus, NVIDIA, of course, would love that a lot of my content be produced with Iray, so they go, Iray,
right.
as seen on deadmouse.com.
How many of those giant heads do you have? And do you have a room specifically just to store them?
Actually, I do. It's under in the machine room in the basement, and I've got all these crates and goofy crap that are where mouse heads go to die, because I always tend to just kind of cart one out until the wheels fall off, and then just do a new one. So there's all these broken ones, and it's where eras go to die.
Okay, so let me ask you about the classes that you've been doing, because Dave actually signed up for that class before we even
the master class.
Which one was it?
Oh, that
the master class.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just kind of my candid approach to making music. They sent me over the master class, this brand or this company that does these things. Kind of sent it off, and I I've always been approached by so and so company saying, hey, you want to do a tutorial on how to do this, and then we'll give you this product, and then it's going to be very product oriented. I won't mention any names due to non-disclosure agreements in place and such, but they would say, here's a product, and then now do a tutorial with us, and how you do something, but try and use our product. But if I don't really use it, that's kind of awkward, but
exactly.
Okay, gay for pay. So we do that. And this one kind of came across from Masterclass, and then I was like, well, what do they want to sell? And I was like, oh wait, nothing. It's just actually about doing a class. And they're like, yeah, no, people people buy the class, so it's not an ad. It's not like something we just throw up on YouTube and then put your face on. It gets a lot of views, and then we collect ad revenue, and that's how we're able to pull it off. It's more like, you know, like a thing. And I was like, holy shit. And then I've never actually heard of Masterclass until then. And then I looked them up, and they're like, Werner Herzog and Kevin Spacey. And I was like, holy fuck, this is like, these dudes legit. Are serious, you know? So
yeah, it's legit.
Yeah. So like, I'm like, why are they asking me? You know, that's so weird. You know, like I felt like kind of taken down a few pegs because I was like, fuck, man, there's like not like, well, I'm shit, that's why. But I just mean like a lot of electronic musicians out there who are really great at their craft. And I thought that was a really cool thing. So I had to do it. You know, I was like, fuck, man, I got to get in on that because they wanted me to be the kind of dude. So they came, and it was like a 3-week shoot where they literally destroyed my house and turned it into like a lab, you know. So I had all these post rooms and previs rooms and all this stuff, and they carpeted everywhere. It just literally blew up my house for like, you know, a couple of weeks filming this thing. And they were like, okay, well, you know, like there's no script. Just we got some bullets of like what to talk about maybe, and then you could touch on those subjects, and you can talk for like hours and hours and hours. And of course they edited it down because obviously what was said and done all those days, so it's like probably have it be like a 3-4 day long masterclass, no problem.
Right.
But they get the parts that they feel are, you know, useful and stuff like that, and kind of get the information they need just by kind of coaching you before filming. And then you'll notice like they're all basically one shot. You know, there's no editing. So they were like, you know, just be you, do your thing, and explain what you do and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, man, that's awesome. I can't believe they haven't done one on 3D yet. MoGraph. Yeah. Maybe I should put that down the line.
There you go.
Yes, you should.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
You guys can Thunderdome it out.
I mean, you've seen there's a lot of tutorials online. I mean, that's where we started, you know, just doing tutorials and stuff like that to get it out there. So I feel like the MoGraph community really, we're all about sharing. You know,
totally.
We learn something, we're like, push it.
Far more about motion graphics online that is useful information than in less time. Like we're talking a whole career's worth of music, you know, than you'd learn. Because the thing about motion graphics is a lot of it is not so subjective and more as it is factual. Whereas music, you know, if you ask a guy about opinion in a mix, you're going to get dudes who are just basically applying their own tastes to an opinion and then enforcing it and then saying that's the right way you should be doing it. But with motion graphics, it's technical, you know, so it's not belief or opinion or taste. This is how you fucking do it, you know, and it's bang, 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 bang. So that exchanging information in that kind of way is so much easier to absorb because you're not getting some dude's opinion, you know, you're getting a workflow, his workflow or his method or his workaround kind of thing, and that's it. And I've learned so much that I don't think anyone needs to go and go to I don't know, the school of motion graphics, you know, for $70K a year, you know, like there's so much fucking online that even if you're not just trying to learn, if you want to just learn to do one specific thing, you have a shot in mind, like, okay, I want my text to come across the screen and I want it to dissolve into sand and then blow away. You will probably find a tutorial that does exactly fucking that. And
there's an Andrew Kramer tutorial that does that exact thing.
I'm sure, you know, like probably, or like I want to make a Rubik's Cube. Where do I, you know, and then you can find an hour-long fucking video of a kid, you know, from Germany going on about here's how you make a Rubik's Cube and here's how you incorporate like a motion system so you don't have to do keyframes and all that shit. And you're like, fuck, man, this is great. Like, everything's just so concise and because it's not subjective, you find that there are no dickheads in the community. You know what I mean? Well, maybe one or two, but not.
Yeah, there's
but
always a couple.
It's not rampant with that, you know, because there's no. How many? Is there genres of motion graphics? No, it's just kind of all one thing, you know. But with electronic music, you have your dubstep camp that absolutely hates the the trance camp, and you know what I mean. So you get some factions, and it's all. You know, everything's divided into subgenres. So you get little armies scattered around here and there. And then if you're just in there to learn, you're like in a war zone, you know, like this camp's opinion and this camp, this sucks, this is in, this is out, this is not a thing anymore. You know what I mean? But whereas motion graphics, there's no faction. So everyone's just focused on learning, you know, and so that attitude of superiority, there is none, you know.
And everybody's really nice about criticism and constructive criticism and that kind of thing online.
Yeah. So it's a different thing. It's a completely different world. So it's not like, you know, you're thinking like, well, I've seen tutorials online, so this is really unattractive to me because, you know.
Yeah. That guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. Okay, so for someone who's in the motion graphics industry who would love to get into concert visuals, you know, as someone who kind of has the background of, you know, doing your own concert visuals as well as the music, how would you suggest for someone who wants to do that to really like step up their game and like, you know, somehow do it?
I think that like it very much is in line with like how do I, it's like asking how do I become a famous musician, or how do we, it's not how do I become a great musician, because they're two different things, you know. It's like, well, to become a great motion graphics designer, watch, you know, shit like this, join communities, be a part of this, watch tutorials, get involved. That's like no brainer. Anyone can fucking do that, and anyone can become a great motion graphics designer. But that's great. You're great and you're awesome. You've seen literally every tutorial. You can whip shit up like a ninja, no problem, and knock stuff out. And then you enter the world of like, you know, getting out. And it's all part of like, you know, just like the way being a musician is, it's joining communities. Like my first music community I joined was a little shit one in Chicago called Section Z at the time, which was like basically paramount to like a BBC board or BBS board, you know. So had a couple hundred people on it, but one out of those 100 people like are going to go somewhere and then, you know, refer to your work, you know. Just like Beeple, you know, he's put in, you know, a lot of time in community, you know, online and offline, and peddled around and applied his craft in the real world as well. And, you know, now he's just like a name, you know. So guys like me, I don't know shit about motion graphics. I don't know fuck all about your communities and stuff like that. I come around, well, I didn't then, or, you know, assuming I don't, and assume everyone else doesn't either, you know. I need a good designer. Okay. Best motion graph designer. You know, G Monk, Chris Cunningham, you know, people, and this and that. You know, those are the dudes that are gonna. And then of course they're just. It's like that feedback effect, you know, and then their name gets around more because the artists are talking about them internally. You know, not so much like saying it on their, you know, at their Grammy speech, but you know. That's kind of how I find guys, sort of like. So then now I can name every major motion graphics studio or post studio like Method and Blur and all that stuff. So like, and I know their tastes and styles and their rates and can go to for certain things, you know, that I need done, and our production team has that knowledge now. Now we have. You know, 22 artists, all need music videos, all need YouTube intro things, or just, you know, some motion graphics that not just apply to their shows, which is a bigger part of it because that's a big job of, you know, coming up with like up to 100 minutes of creative original content to show at your show, but you have to also apply that stuff to, you know, spots for social media. A big thing now, believe it or not, with you know, the record industry or the music industry rather, is, you know, like I do a record, say, and I have a single and I got to get it up on YouTube, right? Which is backwards, right? Because it's like, why are you using a video thing to show a track? Well, that's just because the social reach it has, you know, as opposed to, you know, mailing out USB keys or any other website or whatever. The highest traffic one would be YouTube or Facebook or linking to YouTube in some way. That's just the industry standard, as it were, right now. Now, then it gets into, you know, like, okay, they put their track up and they just put a graphic up. You know, that's
what we do for
cool.
our podcast on YouTube.
You should have,
right.
You should rig up an FFT, cool little 3D scene and do this thing. But for music, it's more important than a podcast. Anyway, so exactly that. So then some guys got clever, and actually, the first group of dudes I saw doing this was a YouTube station, radio station, as it were, called UKF, and it's like UKF dubstep, right? And it's all just fucking dubstep or whatever, but that doesn't matter. Point aside, they have this speaker and some really cool motion graphics with the tunes that they upload. Now, they're not their tunes and stuff like that, but they would put this like cool thing with this like FFT detection, After Effects crap, and then all of a sudden you start seeing these tutorials popping up like, oh, how to do this with After Effects to make your music visualizer or something like that. Just so it's something on YouTube that looks cool, right? And I'm thinking like, wow, that's a thing, you know? So we have all these artists that you know, output their stuff through our label out onto YouTube, and then we just kind of hire an intern real quick. Hey, just do some After Effects thing and stuff like that. But the cooler it is, better presentation it has, you know, and sadly that's a thing, you know, that is associated with music. So, you know, there's so many markets and applications for motion graphics within my industry. So, and I can only imagine it's with everything else, you know, like I don't fully know the MoGraph, like where you can apply your craft.
We're still trying to figure that out.
How you can market it and have a full-time job, just sitting, you know, at a desk doing motion graphics and stuff like that. But
yeah,
it's between you and your gods, man. But I'm just saying, there's always a huge spot for that kind of thing in the music business.
Thank you so much for being here, man. I feel like I've learned so much, and like it's just so cool of you to like actually take the time to like. I mean, it's so cool to see people like you actually doing this stuff and sharing with us. You know,
sharing with us directly online instead of like through some sort of, you know,
my agent.
Publishing company. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, my Laura will shut this down in about an hour, dude. She's on it. All right, thanks so much. I love talking about this stuff. I love learning, and thanks so much, you guys, for your tutorials and your community.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, man.
Later.